Okay, so we just figured out that to find our x-intercepts, we're going to set the equation we had equal to 0. But when you get to this point, you might be confused as to what you need to do. Well, you can try factoring. And I don't know if you already know how to do that, but it would be where you take the last number, or you take the middle number, which is going to be b, as we explained in the last video. So that would be -4. And you're going to set that over. I like to do it on an x. You might have learned it on a t. And you set that over this 5, and you think in your head, okay, what multiplies together to get -4? That could be -2 and 2. It could be 4 and -1. It could be -1 and 4. And then you're going to look on the bottom, and you're going to say what multiplies to get -4 and adds to get 5. Now, in my head, I'm going, okay, 4 and 1 would add to get 5, but 4 and 1 would not multiply to get 4. I could go -4 times -1, and that would get me 5, but that would add together to get something totally different. So, all in all, what I'm trying to say is you can try factoring, but in this scenario, it's not going to work. So we're just going to X that out. Nothing of this is working. So we're going to use the quadratic formula, which you should know, is x is equal to, I like to sing a little song, x is equal to the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all of this over 2a. So my little song goes, x is equal to the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all over 2a. And I've memorized that for 6 years. So then you're going to insert what you have for b. Remember, we found b as being -4, a as being 1, because there's a 1 in front of this x squared, and then we have c as being 5. So we're going to input this into our formula. -4, which would come out to a +4.
Did you already do negative here or 2a?
And then we're going to have b squared, which is -4 again,
I didn't realize what that actually meant.
minus 4 times 1 times 5, all over 2 times 1. So we're going to do the math, and it's going to be 4. X is equal to 4 plus or minus the square root of 16, because -4 times -4 is 16, minus 4 times 5, which is, in the end, going to be -20. So I'm going to write that in. 16 minus 20, what's 16 minus 20? That is -4. So 16 minus 20 is -4. We have a negative inside of a square root. You cannot do that. Nothing is going to multiply to itself to get a negative number. If you have a -1 times a -1, that's going to be a +1. Any negative number times itself, which is what squaring is not going to equal negative. So we know that this is not possible. But what do we do in that case? Well, we add an I at the end of it because it's going to be imaginary. We're taking the imaginary number, so we can get rid of the negative there. So now we have 4 plus or minus 4i, the square root of 4i, over 2. What we're going to have in the end is 4 plus the square root of 4i, and then we're going to have 4 minus the square root of 4i. Both of these are going to be over 2. See, we separated the equation because there's a plus or minus there. On this side, we're going to come out to, what's on the sheet? What's the answer on the sheet?
So let's do this first.
Here's what I found.
And so take the I out. Square root of 4 is just 2. 4 over 2. And then we have 2 minus 2i over 2.
It would be 4 minus 2.
My bad. It's a 4. This all simplifies. Take the 2 out of the bottom. 2 plus I. 2 minus I.
And right there is all going to be equal to x. And since this is called the quadratic formula, we're finding our x-intercepts. So our two x-intercepts are going to be equal to 2 plus I 2 plus I, and 2 minus I. So those are our two x-intercepts for your problem here. A lot of the time you're not going to get that I in there because it's not going to be a negative number under the square root. But this is one of the weird situations where on your graph, you would have, I know for this equation it's going to be 2 over 1 up as our vertex. We found that in the last video. But there's actually going to be no x-intercept because it's just going to open up like that and it's never going to intercept with the x line. So in reality, these numbers, 2 plus I and 2 minus I, are never actually going to show up on our graph when we actually graph it. But they're imaginary, so we still need to put them down there if we're going in an imaginary coordinate plane, but we're not doing that today. So that's the x-intercept, and we're going to figure out how to do the y-intercept and the y range and the x range in the next video. So.